Good evening, everybody. This is Chris McDonald coming to you live from Great Falls Wealth Management here in Rockingham, North Carolina. We're here tonight with our good friend, Mayor Extraordinaire, Historian Extraordinaire, John Hutchinson, Mayor of the town of Rockingham. John's going to be joining us here in just a second. We're going to talk to him about several different things that are going on here in Rockingham and throughout the area and in the county. So we're looking forward to doing that. We are, as I said, we're on location. John's office is amazing with all of the different intricate pictures and just hoi polloi almost would be almost the way to say it. But you see everything in here from old bricks from Rockingham Junior High to a planter of from the tobacco days of Richmond County to multiple pictures and different other trinkets, as I said. He's an interesting person, and I'm happy to call him a friend for over 40 years. And let's call John in now and meet him. John,
Chris,
I see you.
good to see you. Thank you.
Well, John, you've been mayor now for almost 3 years. You're starting your second term here, but 3 years through beginning your second term. What did you learn in your first term, and what have you learned, second time through the batting order, so to speak?
Just really beginning the second time, so I think I could speak best to what I learned in the first term, and that's you learn a lot about how things work. I'd been on council for a long time before, but you learn differently and more, I think, as mayor, because you're more directly involved with a lot of things. But I think the most important and interesting thing is just you meet more people and you get involved in more parts of the town. And that's been a really rewarding thing in the first term and continuing into the second term.
Because I know since I came back a year or so ago that there's been a strong push for revitalization, for really making Rockingham even a stronger portion. It is the county seat, but it also is getting a lot more of development, getting folks more interested in goings on and festivals and whatnot, going on downtown, rebuilding downtown. A lot of things that you've kind of have your fingers in all the way around the community.
Sure. Well, that's the good thing about a smaller community. We're 9,500 people here, give or take. So you can be directly involved in a lot of things. I mean, it's a smaller area, so you can be more hands-on. There is a lot happening in our downtown area, and then even with the shopping centers as well, with some redevelopment and some new chains coming in the shopping center area. We think about it's one we're already taking for granted, but Starbucks making it to Rockingham and Richmond County about a year ago. Jersey Mike's, that was part of that same redevelopment. And we're seeing some applications for additional redevelopment of some older retail property in that part of Rockingham. So that's good. But then the core of the city, of course, is our downtown area. And that's the older part of the city as well. And gosh, we're continuing an effort that began, I would say, 2 decades ago to do a lot of key redevelopment down there and had a lot of success. And we've had some really wonderful partners who've made that possible. I think about one thing that Rockingham has that a lot of other communities don't, and that's the 2 foundations. We have 2 rather large charitable foundations that pump a lot of money into our community each year. And together, they've allowed us to build a children's museum. They've allowed us to build an extension of the community college in downtown. They've allowed us to renovate, acquire in a couple of situations as well, but acquire and renovate some older properties and convert them into more modern uses. So it's been a combination of a lot of creativity on behalf of the city staff and a lot of support from those foundations. And it's just bringing the partners together.
Right. And trying to get the right people together and ones who have the same goals that you do, and seeing the area grow and prosper and get back to what it was in the the 40s, the 50s and 60s and whatnot.
Right. Yeah. And that's really the goal. It's to bring a lot of life back to the older downtown area. And I mentioned the relationships and the importance of good relationships. It's having a good relationship with Discovery Place Museum out of Charlotte and working with them to locate here. Even outside the downtown area, development of a couple of parks. Henson Lake is something that the city was able to work together with the North Carolina Wildlife Group, and again with the foundations and with the Rotary Club to make that a usable public park. Hitchcock Creek, we have that wonderful creek running through the middle of town with virtually undisturbed banks, just very natural, very beautiful area. We worked with American Rivers on that. So again, it's finding partners, it's working with our constant partners, the foundations, and then finding additional partners like American Rivers, like North Carolina Wildlife, like Discovery Place, like Richmond Community College, and working toward a common goal.
You've never been afraid to ask the questions why or how. Why is that?
That's true. I think that's how you learn things.
Yeah.
I think you always have to have an inquisitive mind. You always have to wonder how things work, or whether we can make things better, or whether we can change our approach to something. I mean, that's how we grow. And you had a great podcast on growth last week.
Thank you.
And we could take that in some additional directions about a growth mindset where you approach things as challenges that you can rise to, or you can look at them as obstacles that you can never confront. So a growth mindset says, let's find a way. Let's ask questions. Let's find a way to make this work.
Right. One of the things that I was taught by a dear friend of mine, Charlene Hurst, who's the LPGA pro over at Whispering Pines, she taught me, she said, the way that you learn how to play golf is you learn it from the green back to the tee. Okay, because you're always keeping the result at the front of your mind. The result, get the lowest score somehow. And when I had given lessons in the past, I had always, done that. We start with the putting, then we go to the chipping, and then we go out to the shots from the fairway, and then the shots but with always the end in mind. And that's, kind of what I've seen. I know that we have a lovely lady and a lovely group of friends, Dr. Wanda Wall-Spivey,
yes,
who has really, who was actually my first interview when I came back to town. She is a delight to be around. Just lights up the room when she comes in, and she and Bruce Stanback and our lovely friends Amy and Farah from Habitat for Humanity. And a lot of others whose names I can't recall, but there's just so many to recall, are in the process of trying to develop some areas and redevelop some areas down on East Washington Street. And that just having, getting those 6 people or 8 people together to do that, that's what it takes. And that's where service comes in.
Sure. That's building the new relationships. It's finding the new partners. I listened to that in your podcast last week about, beginning with I guess the final putt. I'm not a golfer,
Right.
as you know, but beginning with the final putt. And Stephen Covey wrote a wonderful book years ago, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And one of the habits is begin with the end in mind.
Correct.
It's know where you're headed and work backward from there. Same idea, whether applied to sports or whether applied to local projects
or wealth management or anything of the sort.
Sure, absolutely. You always, if you know where you are going, you can plot your route to get there, and you know how to pivot or change when you encounter an obstacle somewhere along the way.
Right.
The obstacle doesn't become the end. It becomes just a challenge toward that known goal.
It's never a straight line. There's always some curves and
when you play golf, it's a straight line, isn't it, all the time?
not if I'm hitting it, that's for sure. Where does this come from? Where does this come from? The stuff that your parents taught you about, about wanting to be a leader, to be someone who works in service to help folks. Does that come from your mom and dad?
I think that's probably right. And today actually would be my father's 94th birthday.
Oh, wow.
So how about that?
Nice. How about that? Serendipitous.
He believed very strongly in community service. And my mother, of course, devoted her life to young readers as a librarian at the junior high school and loved that role and believed in that as a real service to other
Right.
people. I went to Davidson College undergrad,
Right.
and they had a really strong undercurrent there. It was never taught directly, but it was something that you sort of understood was expected. And that was that you would take what you learned, you would take the skills and the talents that they developed in you, and you would use them for the good of the community somehow.
Right.
So there was always an idea that you're supposed to serve the community and to try to make the world a better place,
Right.
at least in the area that you serve.
Right. And having attended East Carolina, that actually is our motto, servere, to serve. I mean, that's one of the things that, again, it's an undercurrent. It's not broadcast, as it were, but it's an undercurrent to know that, we are here to use the adage, the purpose-filled life. There is a, we're here to do certain things. And that's one thing that I really find fascinating with the way that you've embraced being the mayor, you've embraced leading the community. You've also, with this business that we have here with Great Falls, it's amazing how that has developed into what it has.
Yeah, that's been a wonderful challenge. We just celebrated our 5th year here.
Right.
And I felt like if we were going to put the community and the client first, then you had to be a different kind of firm that allowed you to focus on people and community and not have the noise in the background of somebody else's expectations of what you needed to do for their firm. Because that creates a conflict. So who am I serving? Am I serving the firm behind me, or am I serving the client?
Right.
And then am I serving the community? And I really am thankful that we were able to make that change several years ago, so the client and the community could always come first.
And in that they benefit from that.
Oh, absolutely. Yes.
Right. And that's not being disparaging by any way to any of the, the larger firms, if you will, national known firms we see advertised, consistently during the sports on Saturdays and Sundays and the golf tournaments and whatever. But with how that you did this, what made, you said that you wanted to, really benefit the community more and everything and all. Was there anything else that kind of made you want to do the breakaway from the bigger firms and just say, I'm going to go and do this by myself, or do this myself?
That was really all client driven.
Yeah.
Is what it was, because they had processes, really more particularly rules and regulations on who you were supposed to deal with and how. And I thought, that doesn't allow me to serve as wide a range of people as I think I ought to be able to in the community in which I live.
Right.
And when you are not able to serve the community in which you live, then I think it's difficult. It'd be a challenge. It felt like a challenge.
Right. Well, and you are, effectively, the word that you hear through a lot of the commercials and whatnot is a fiduciary. You are looking out for putting your clients first and looking out for them, and then and their bottom line. And then again, not to steal mottos and such that I could be sued for, but when you do better, when they do better, you do better.
Correct. And that is the key difference. It's
Right.
I am a fiduciary
Right.
in this role. At the prior firm and in a typical sort of firm, you're not a fiduciary.
Right.
So you're required to
There's a bottom line in that. You hear that's it's what you do for it's a service. It's you are a service, where there is you're more of a soldier in a big army, so to speak.
Exactly. And here I'm required to put the client's interest first.
Right.
Which is great, because it aligns the way I think with my responsibility. So there's no longer that conflict.
Right.
Of, I feel this responsibility to do what is always in the client's best interest, and yet I don't have the tools.
Right.
That could be the situation before. I didn't have the tools to do what I thought was best in every situation. Now I do.
Right. How'd you come up with the name for Great Falls Wealth Management?
I love that question. This is going to take you down the road of history a
Yeah,
little
boy,
bit,
there we
in
go.
fact. We've got a long textile history here. Richmond County at one time was one of the largest textile producing counties in all of the United States. It all began at a really odd geographical landmark that we have right here in Rockingham. We have the highest natural waterfall east of Charlotte in the Carolinas, located a mile and a quarter right from where we sit right now.
Mhm.
Most people don't know it's back there because it's hidden off from the road, but it's a natural wonder, really. It's so unique. And that waterfall became the water power for the first major textile mill in Richmond County.
Oh, wow.
It was called Great Falls Mill, and it was the mill that transformed the way everything happened here. It was the mill that transformed us from an agricultural economy into an industrial economy. And it was the mill that made so many people wealthy. It gave so many people jobs. And I thought, yeah, Great Falls is where it all began for Rockingham in the years after the Civil War. And it seemed to me that that should be honored somehow, both as an unusual landmark and then also as a turning point in our local economy.
What was it that Kennedy said about the water, about us, about, we come from the water and we return to the water? And and it can, in this instance, the water, of Great Falls, is now spreading out through the community to replenish what had been a barren land, like when a Clark left, or when,
Right.
when the Burlingtons left, that different Safi, when all those guys when all those guys shut down and the jobs went away, that with this, now we're able to replenish and come from the darkness of a barren land, to steal from T.S. Eliot. And so that's really, that is a positive thing that comes from this.
It is. It's, hoping that in some small way, this practice and the related things I do through the practice can help shape the future of Rockingham and Richmond County.
Right, because we do have the gentleman down that's doing the refurbishment, Ruben, that's doing the refurbishment
Yes.
down there as well. How is that, kind of helped with, with going down there, cleaning it out and making it what it eventually will become, which is going to be a place for weddings and a venue and whatnot.
That's an exciting project, and Ruben is a real visionary.
Very much so.
He can look at a piece of property or an opportunity or a building and see things that other people can't see. He looked at that old mill site with the beautiful waterfall, with the ruins of a mill that burned 50 years ago. And he said, he looked at it and said, this could be an event venue. Moreover, it's across the street from a couple of hotels.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a natural place for people to stay while they're here for some major family event, like a wedding or a reunion or something like that. And he's working hard to make that happen. And it's going to be a beautiful venue when he's done. It's got a lot of work ahead.
Mm-hmm.
He's hardworking. He's ambitious.
He's a fascinating individual. He's really,
He
really
sure is.
incredible to talk to.
Yeah.
I had the pleasure of talking to him as well, and just to see what the whole plans and the schematic and everything that he wants to do. I mean, it's just, the thing that I get in talking to these folks that are, that are these visionaries and whatnot is like, why didn't someone else come up with this? And then it goes back to, well, right people, right time. Now I dropped my notes. Right people, right time. And that's really where a lot of this comes from, is right people in right time.
That's right. And that's who, as a mayor, you want to hook up with these people. You want to encourage these people. You mentioned Dr. Spivey, for instance. There's another couple in town, the Darlings.
The Darlings, yes. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to forget them.
And you find people like Ruben Huerta or like Dr. Spivey or like the Darlings. And they are the people that sort of fall in your community. They just sort of land here, and you're so thankful when they do, because they're making things happen, and you want to meet them and encourage them and find if there are ways you can help. To mention the Darlings, as you did the Dr. Spivey, they've just acquired their fourth house
Oh,
in
wow.
Rockingham. Of course, for the audience, they are buying older houses that are in need of a lot of love. That's one of our real assets here is the older architecture. We have beautiful architecture, so much of which goes back to the Victorian era. Homes that are big and stately and beautiful, and in some cases in a state of disrepair. And it's easy to ride down that main road, Fayetteville Road, and look at it and think, gosh, in 20 years, all these houses are going to be in disrepair. It's easy to lose hope sometimes.
Right.
When you see people in the community who are stepping up and they're buying these homes and they're renovating them and improving them and finding new owners to come in and love them, and then they move on to the next house and renovate that one. That's very exciting to me.
You tell two people, I'll tell people, and so on and so on and so on.
Exactly. And that's what ensures that those houses will not only be maintained, but they'll be beautiful in another 20 years.
Because I know we have the one that's at the intersection of Steel and Fayetteville Road, right across the street from where the birds live.
Right.
That one, I've been watching that change as the months have gone through.
It is, and I've spoken with that couple. They're actually going to renovate and live in that house. They're from New York.
Right.
All of your listeners who are from outside of Richmond County, make note of this.
Right.
They were shocked at what price, how little they could buy a house like that for here. I think they paid a fifth of what it would have cost in New York.
Right.
I mean, they were stunned by how far the dollar went here. And it left them plenty of additional money for the renovations that they're doing. And I need to meet them personally at some point. But that house is a unique house. It's connected to the University of North Carolina through the Moorhead Scholarship. There were part of the Moorhead family lived there for a time, cousins of John Motley Moorhead, who created the scholarship. The builder was a grandnephew of a North Carolina governor. One of the original residents of that house was considered a leading candidate for North Carolina governor a couple of times in the 1800s. I mean, just so many good stories about the people who have lived in and around that property. And it's great to see it saved.
Is that the one, and I could be wrong, you told me that there's one of the houses that was flipped around.
That's the one that was flipped around.
Okay. That's okay. Tell that story real quick.
Sure. That house was originally built facing, for those who live here, East Washington Street, which runs parallel behind it. And in 1899, they decided they would rather face Fayetteville Road, which was, more of a prestigious street, I think, at that time, because a lot of those big houses were being built and they had not built the really impressive houses on East Washington at that point. So they decided to turn the house around. They put it more or less on wooden rollers and got together teams of mules.
Oh, wow.
And turned it around and drug it to face Fayetteville Road where it is now. Probably drug it 150, 200 yards.
That's amazing. That's amazing. So, just, to think what goes into that now, people having to, move power lines and that it's, that time, of course, no power lines to have to go through.
That's right.
But just a house of that, that magnitude, being able to just flip it around and say, okay, now we're happy.
Yeah.
That's amazing. We've got a couple of minutes left. I did want to mention a couple of things that I'd seen recently. The Woods Warehouse. Tell me a little bit about that. What folks are trying to do with that?
Sure. And again, you have somebody coming in and taking an older piece of property and doing something wonderful.
Now, let me interrupt you real quick there. You actually had a tie-in with Woods.
Yes.
Family-wise.
Yes. Once upon a time, there was a 5 and dime chain, Woods 5 and dime stores. And it was, it really began with my grandfather and a couple of his nephews. And at one time it was a chain of 37 stores, I believe, across the two Carolinas. And in the late 1970s, early 1980s, it was acquired and broken up and then ceased to exist. But the warehouse where all of the goods were stored and shipped to the 37 different stores was right there on the outskirts of Rockingham.
Is it right down here up just off of number 1 South? Is that where it is? Or
it is as you're climbing the hill.
Yeah. Okay.
Yep,
All right. Yeah.
Right there at the intersection of Mill Road.
Correct.
And
yeah.
US 1
right.
in that fork in the road. We are in need of multifamily housing in Rockingham. There's not a lot of undeveloped property where we could put multifamily housing. And somebody has acquired that property and is looking at it as a multifamily housing, multi-unit facility, almost like a set of condos under one giant roof.
Cool.
The issue we're running into is that the current regulations for that zoning district put a limitation on how many units you could have within that building. And it's an enormous building with the potential to hold many more units than what our zoning will allow.
Right.
So we're going to discuss changing that part of our ordinance at our February meeting.
Good. That's good to hear. A lot better, a lot more housing, very much so. One of the things that I've pestered you about this, through stories and also through just questioning you. What's the story with Food King? What's coming with Food King?
That's a very popular question.
It is a popular question.
If I told you, I'd have to kill you.
I understand. Yep. That's all right.
We are actually working hard to find the right person to develop that property, and in discussions right now. The hope is that it will be not only a restaurant, because we love our locally owned and operated restaurants, but also it would have space for a couple of retail operations as well. So it's got a lot of potential, and we are getting closer to having it redeveloped.
Good deal. Good deal. Absolutely. And I guess one of the other things that I did want to mention to you, you've had a good run so far with what you've been doing with the county and the city, and we're kind of slowly but surely, walk of 1,000 miles, one single step, but we're getting there. And if you can take a minute and a half or so, and you had something to say to the folks of Richmond County and across whomever else that will be seeing this, my other two fans in here, one of them's my dog. But what would you say to them about Richmond County to get them to be interested to invest in Rockingham, Richmond County, something along those lines?
If I'm encouraging people to invest here?
Yeah.
Gosh, where do I start? Because I see so much potential, for one thing. I'm always excited about the potential. I think it's a town full of good people. It's a community full of good people. I mean, the folks you'll meet in the grocery store, you may not even know them, but it's just always going to be a friendly encounter, a good experience. It's an easy town in which to feel comfortable. I think if you look beyond just the immediate town and the immediate opportunity, you look at where we are, and we're so well located in the Carolinas. I mean, we're an hour and a half from Greensboro, Charlotte, Raleigh, 2 hours from Wilmington. We are in the middle of so many major areas, not far from the mountains, 2 hours from Myrtle Beach and the coast. It's a perfect location if you're trying to get anywhere else. So it's a great headquarters.
Kind of literally a crossroads.
It is. And that's excellent. I think you're close to so many things without having to deal with necessarily the headaches of traffic that you might have somewhere else, or some of the other frustrations that can go along with living in a community where you don't necessarily know people as well. We don't necessarily have the strong relationships and the friendships and all of that. You can have all those right here.
Right.
And still get to all that Charlotte or Raleigh or Greensboro will offer within half a day, and get back home as well. So
get to a lot of baseball stadiums.
Absolutely. But I would encourage people to follow their dreams here as well. We have a lot of locally owned businesses, a lot of local entrepreneurs who've done very well, and so much potential for somebody who's willing to open up shop here and work hard.
Absolutely. Well, John, I appreciate your time. I know you're quite busy and you have to shuffle off, and with three children and a wife and everyone going 7 different directions each night. I know it's very hard to get you down, but thank you again for doing this.
Of course, it's a pleasure.
Go over and then click the button. All right, folks. Well, that's our interview with John Hutchinson. Greatly appreciate him. Next week, this is a big one coming up. It's a 6-year anniversary of me losing the 115 pounds that I lost. Yes, I was a I was a Teletubby, I can tell you. My good friend, Miss Margaret Solano McGrath from out in Orange County, California, who is my health coach, She will be joining us, so we'll be doing a little 30-minute with her and let her to explain her story and my story. So we thank you a lot again for watching tonight, and we'll see you next week.